Okay, ready? All right. Well, the November 13th Dune City Council meeting, please come to order. It is 7:00 p.m. Renee, could we have roll call, please, this evening?
Sure. Mayor Rebecca Reedy.
Here.
Council President Jamie Mills.
Here.
Councilor Sheldon Meyer.
Present.
Councilor Maurice Sanders.
I am here.
Councilor Ed Scarberry.
Here.
And Councilor Duke Wells.
Here.
And let the record show that Councilor Dick Anderson and City Administrator Fred Hilden are both absent and excused this evening.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilors, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve tonight's agenda. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries. Councilors, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Who's the second gonna go to?
Councilor Mills,
Thank you.
any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, moving right along. I was just going to state that our city administrator is out of town this evening, so he couldn't be with us. So thank you, Renee, for stepping in to help us this evening. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Announcements: volunteers are needed to fill one planning commission opening, one road commission opening, 4 budget committee openings, and 1 ordinance review committee opening, 1 parks and recreation committee opening, and 1 water tester, each for Silcoos and Wohang Lakes. So that little list is growing. Announcements continued. The 3rd annual Ordinance Triathlon and Duathlon is scheduled for May 9, and you'll hear a little more about that later on in this evening's meeting. The 3rd annual Mayor's Banquet will be held on December 12th, 2014, from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. Everyone's welcome. It's a potluck type atmosphere. We decided to call it a banquet, just to make it sound a little nicer. So, mark your calendars now because, it's just around the corner. And I have a special treat for you. There just might be an appearance, possibly, by the new baby in town that might receive the nickels and dimes that was in the time capsule. So that's a possibility. So, you'll have to wait and hear more about that later. Okay. Did I pique your imagination or interest? All right. Dune City Artist of the Month are students from Sayula High School and Dune City resident Don Derlin. Beautiful artwork. November birthday wishes to Council President Jamie Mills and Councilor Maurice Sanders and Gary Baker on the 3rd. So in their honor, we will be serving cake after the meeting this evening. So there you go. Councilor Mills, you have a comment?
Yes, I also brought a sour cream apple pie for those who don't want to have cake.
Well, there you go. Almost a potluck already.
Sour cream apple pie.
From Apples Grown in Dune City.
Marvelous.
Okay.
Have fun.
Be interested in birthdays. All right. Well, any other announcements that way? No? All right. We have citizen input this evening. I'd also like to recognize our Lane County Commissioner that joined us, Jay Bozovich. Are you interested in having some words this evening?
No, thank you. I'm just here really to support staff and answer questions that staff may be not allowed to answer if you get into the political realm. So when they get ready to present, I may come up and sit close and then they can turn to me and go, "Yeah, Commissioner."
Defer,
So,
defer, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much, and we'll continue. Citizen input, I have Susie Nevada. Would you like to come forward and give citizen input this evening?
Please share with Ed, he promises not to get me sick.
Did I do that?
It's all right. Will you make 3 more?
I'm Susie Nevada, a resident of New York City. I'd like to talk to you about the comprehensive plan. In 1996, I came here, and that was one of the first things I worked on was the comprehensive plan. We worked on it for over a year, weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. Not always the same people came because it went on and on and on. And when someone would come back a week or so later and didn't agree with something that happened, we went backward and cured that problem and then went on from there. And we thought we came up with the best product we possibly could at that time. And so what I wanted to tell you tonight was that the Dune City Comprehensive Plan has not changed to reflect the amendment to the ordinances that have occurred since 1997. So the comprehensive plan I have in my home is not a true reflection of our code. Things like the Booth Island isn't in there. Cats on Booth Island isn't in there. I can think of a half a dozen more things. There are several. And so we're not all looking at the same thing. I think that the office probably has a full set, but nobody else does. And so while you're writing these new ordinances that need to match with the comprehensive plan, you don't have a complete one. So I think that needs to be straightened out before you go forward. I think it's time to step back, and first you should get a complete ordinance review committee. Have an agreement with the rest of the city council on which route you're taking with the ordinance. Complete amendments to 155 and 203 and others that aren't finished before you go forward, because you'll have to do it again and it's just going to cost money. Why spend twice as much amending the ordinances again after the fact? And that please try and remember the need to match the new with the existing comp plan. I think it's very important. Thank you.
You are correct, ma'am. Thank you very much. Duly noted. Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Alex Collier this evening, and Lydia, you're going to assist. Thank you for coming over, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Alex Kyler, Councilors. I'm the Lane County's Intergovernmental Relations Manager. With me tonight is Lydia McKinney, and she's with Public Works in the Transportation Planning Division. She manages that section for Lane County. The reason we're here tonight is that the Board of County Commissioners has been discussing a vehicle registration fee for Lane County in order to bolster their ability to repair the almost 1,600 miles of roads and over 400 bridges that Lane County is responsible for. In 2001, in 2009, the Oregon legislature passed House Bill 2001 under then Governor Kulongoski. It was called the Jobs and Transportation Act. And then that bill created an increase in the statewide gas tax. And it made a couple of substantial changes to state law, including the local gas taxes would have to be voted on. And that's why I saw the city of Florence recently put their vote out to the people. It also had a clause that allowed counties to either vote on or impose a vehicle registration fee effective in 2013. In July 2013, we saw sort of what we call a sunrise that allowed counties to do that. For counties under 350,000 population, they would have to go out to an election of the people. For counties over, they could impose through an ordinance. We have been talking with the Board of Commissioners about this option for a while. And unfortunately, it's really the need is a result of really the failure of the federal government to manage timber in Lane County and across the nation in national forests the way that they have historically managed timber. You're probably aware that the national forest system way back in the early part of the century created a mechanism that would share revenue with counties. 25% of the revenue from national forests would flow to counties. We split that 75% to the road fund, 25% to the county school fund. And then in Western Oregon, counties with ONC lands, which are managed by the BLM, would get 50% of that revenue that was fully discretionary. So we used those dollars for roads, schools, and then those discretionary dollars really supported the public safety system. So it's sort of no secret that when those dollars started to go away back in 1986 or so with the listing of the spotted owl as a threatened species, the timber harvest declined dramatically. There was a number of actions taken by the federal government to create safety net legislation that ultimately became known as Secure Rural Schools. So that Secure Rural Schools Act actually did replace the timber revenue through about 2006 or so. They then passed a renewal of that act that created some funding that ramped down over time. And really for the last couple of years, we've just existed on these one-year reauthorizations that Congress has passed. Notably, there is not one now. So we are looking like we're just going to go back to actual harvest revenue. And the implications are dramatic. We used to get upwards of $20 million that would go into the road fund. And to see how dramatic that change is, when we go back to actual harvest, it's probably going to drop to about $800,000. So while the county was able to preserve some of the money that it had saved over time and cut operations significantly, we were able to maintain maintenance of roadways pretty effectively. We know that we went into a real problem with public safety. And so in 2013, we put forward a levy, jail levy that the voters supported, and that helped prop up the jail operations. The road fund has been another situation, and like I said, while we were able to maintain some of that for a little bit, it has now gotten to be to the point where we've got to do something. We've got a $6 billion asset in our roadway system, and it's an asset that we just must maintain. So we're looking at this vehicle registration fee. Lydia will talk more about the reasons why it's an attractive vehicle, pardon the pun, for some revenue. But the nice thing is that it provides money not only to the county but also to cities. So under the law that was passed, 60% of the revenue goes to the county, 40% goes to the cities in the county. And that's what we're here to talk to you about. As I indicated, the law did allow for counties over 350,000 to impose the ordinance. And I think the experience of the Board of Commissioners and the tenor of the Board of Commissioners is they'd rather ensure that the voters support that kind of action. And so that's why we've had this conversation about when is the best timing for such an election. And frankly, we need the cities to be partners with us on this because while we think there's support amongst the population of Lane County, we've done some research as to voters' attitudes towards this thing. It's imperative that we have city support for it. So I think I'll stop there, let Lydia go through her presentation for you, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have as a result.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I will go through it rather quickly. I think Alex has touched on some of the things. I'm going to have to ask you to drive here. So
Lydia, would you mind speaking into the microphone? It's for the audio
thank you.
portion of the
I'm
recording.
trying to speak directly into the microphone. So we can just go to the first slide here, Alex. So very quickly, what we want to talk about tonight is I'll give you a background and we'll talk about Lane County's road fund, the corrective actions that we've taken to date and what we see as the current challenges. We'll talk about the revenue options that we've evaluated, and now also about this idea that's become very important to the counties, that is that we are looking for a regional solution. Next slide. So on August 5th, the Board of County Commissioners directed staff to talk to our Roads Advisory Committee about the shrinking road fund. We've been talking to the county board about this for a number of years. And the RAC, Roads Advisory Committee, has reviewed a number of different revenue options. And so the board wanted us to go to them to look at what the options were. The RAC came back with a recommendation to the board to pursue a vehicle registration fee. And I'll talk a little bit more about the details of why we got to that particular option. Recently, on November 4th, the board has directed staff to prepare an ordinance, which we do have a draft ordinance, and to seek letters of support or some form of support for the county. Again, as Alex has said, having city support is very important to the board. And then again, on the 12th, the board provided additional direction on some of the elements of the vehicle registration fee, and again, iterated to us that they wanted to make sure we met with all cities. Next slide. So Alex touched on this, I won't spend too much time on it, but this is again the history of the Forest and Secure Rural Schools payments. And you can see that over time we've had a significant decrease. This hasn't been updated yet for this year, but as Alex mentioned, we really cannot rely on Secure Rural Schools. And our road fund has been decreasing for a number of years for a number of reasons. And we actually are seeing people drive less. That trend is continuing. People's cars are becoming more efficient. People are driving alternative fuel vehicles. So the gas tax that maintains our road fund has been declining. Next slide. So just very quickly for folks just to understand, the state highway fund, which is what goes to not just the county, but of course the cities as part of your road fund, is made up of these different elements. The gas tax, the fuel tax is about 47%. We have registration fees, the vehicle registration fees that the state currently has, which is about 20%. Weight mile tax, all trucks over 26,000 pounds pay an additional tax based on their weight and the number of miles they travel. And this is something that we have in the state of Oregon that most other states don't have. We do have this requirement at the state that the trucks pay their way, and we believe that they're doing that. And then there's just a small, other 7%. But that's what makes up our road fund. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned, and Alex did, we've made a number of corrective actions because we've seen this decline on the horizon for a number of years. We have at Lane County reduced our staffing by 35% since 2000. We have reduced our reserves, our road fund reserves, by 50%. We have done a lot of consolidation and reorganization of departments for efficiency. We've used new types of technologies to try and lower our costs. And we've become very aggressive in seeking grants and regional partnerships to be able to make our dollars go further and to work with partners so that we can get places together. Next slide. With even all of these things, we still have gotten to the point where, as our county administrator uses the term, the tipping point, and that's where we see ourselves now. Next slide. So the current challenges are, again, this is just a slide to show over the time how the funding challenge that we're currently facing, the reduction in road fund reserves, our funds are going down and our expenses are going up. Perhaps you see the same thing in your city here. And what we're looking at is a shortfall of about $9 million. That's for the county. And just a slide to remind ourselves and everybody that it's not just maintenance and preservation that we're looking at, but we're looking at emergency response, snow removal in the winter. I mean, that operations piece of maintenance and operations, I don't have to tell you, but that's very important. Next slide. So this other thing that, and we hear this a lot from the public, that, well, why are you looking for this? Because your county roads are in really good shape. Well, we take a lot of pride in that, and our roads are in very good shape. And we have had a history of being able to maintain our roads at a level where we call this pavement life cycle. We have a pavement condition index, and if you invest a few dollars to maintain and preserve your roads while they're still in good shape, it's far more cost effective than having roads deteriorate. It becomes more and more expensive the worse the road system gets, and it eventually comes to the point where you have to reconstruct the entire road. So we're saying if you spend $1 here, you save yourself the delayed cost of $12 by waiting over a period of time. And again, I think the county, we have a good example of maintaining those roads in pretty good shape over time. Next slide. And again, this is just another slide to demonstrate the pavement condition index in terms of even if we get additional funds, we do have this backlog of maintenance needs that keeps on growing year after year. Next slide. So again, this idea that the Board of County Commissioners and the Lane County Administrator has been very focused on, which is, you know, when people are out there driving, they're not saying, oh, this is a county road, this is a state road, this is Dune City Road. They think these are roads. They want the roads to function as a system. It doesn't really matter to them whose road it is. And it's not just our road fund that's declining. We see the same trend in the cities as well, not to mention other places in the state. So we really wanted to look at a solution that would be not just a county solution, but that would be something that would be more regional. Next slide. So these are the final 8 revenue options. We had a revenue options committee that actually started with 27 different options that we looked at. They narrowed it down to 8, and again, one of the things that the county really was focusing on was a funding mechanism that we could use for maintenance and preservation. We're not looking for money to build new roads. That's a capital kinds of projects. So the 8 options here, the Roads Advisory Committee analyzed, the Board of County Commissioners heard about all these different options. We were able to implement a grant writer in 2012, and actually that program has brought in a lot of additional dollars to the county. But ultimately, when we analyzed all these different options, road bonds, those are generally good for capital, transportation utility fees have difficulty with implementation. One of the things that it really came down to in looking at the different alternatives is some of these are new types of taxes or new types of systems that don't have some mechanism to be able to administrate them. That is, there really isn't if we wanted to pass a transportation utility fee, there isn't an existing mechanism to collect that money. The utilities put it on their bill, they don't really like that, then they have to administer it, take out some money, distribute it to us. With a local vehicle registration fee, and go ahead to the next slide, Alex, there's a number of reasons that this became the preferred solution. The one on the bottom, I'll get there first because that's what I was just talking about, the ease of administration. The fee is collected through the state the way the current state vehicle registration fee is and the gas tax is. The state would distribute that to the county, and then the counties will, at no additional cost, we will distribute the 40% to the cities. The regional solution, again, that this was a regional solution and there was a benefit to the cities was important. There's a stability in a vehicle registration fee that we're not seeing in the gas tax. Again, the gas tax does tend to go down. We are seeing, I think that will just continue. The trend is vehicles will get more efficient, alternative fuels will become more popular, and so we don't see the gas tax as a long-term solution. We really see this as a system fee. The gas tax is a use fee. You pay that gas tax for the amount that you use the system, but the vehicle registration fee is how you pay to sort of get into that. All people who own cars pay that. Bicyclists, there are a lot of discussion about bicyclists. 95% of bicyclists own vehicles, so they also pay that user fee to be able to use the system. It's specifically directed for road use only, constitutionally, and that's important to people. We will use this for roads only. That is stated specifically by the Oregon Constitution. Next slide. So again, regional solution, the way that the fee is collected is based on the number of registered vehicles in Lane County, but we distribute it per the ORS based on the city's populations. So Dune City has about 0.51% of the overall population in Lane County, and we've done a general calculation, don't quote us on the exact dollar, but based on the fee that the board is recommending, which I'll get to in a moment, Dune City would receive $22,000 a year annually. So how can a vehicle registration fee be applied? It is very specific in the ORS what we can apply it to and what we can't. So there are a number of vehicles that are exempted. Agricultural vehicles, for instance, those are not permitted by law to have a registration fee attached to it. We cannot apply a vehicle registration fee to trucks over 26,000 pounds. Just can't do it per the ORS. And again, those are the vehicles that pay the weight mile tax. So they are currently being charged significantly more. The provision that Alex talked about in terms of getting to a vehicle registration fee was supported by a number of stakeholders. When we start talking about gas tax, there's a lot of strong organizations that are very opposed to a gas tax. And the indication is that that would be very difficult to pass at a county level. But a vehicle registration fee is more of a solution that has a broader support. And again, Alex mentioned that we can impose a vehicle registration fee with our population, but our board is not interested in doing that. They want to be able to recommend that to the voters. And again, restricted to the road fund purposes within the right of way. So Alex mentioned the polling that we did. We hired a firm that actually the same company we used for the sheriff's levy that was passed a couple of years ago. What he found, his name is Gary Manross, and what he found is that 62% of the people surveyed would rather pay a modest increase rather than having additional cuts in services. And at the county, we've tried very hard to maintain our level of service, but we have had to reduce our services. For instance, we no longer use the dust abatement program, and that has affected some of our citizens. Next slide. So this is the, what he polled the question, the maximum we could ask for is $43 a year. And we asked that question, is there support for that? And the long story short is no. There really isn't enough support for a $43 a year fee. But when you take it down to 35, the numbers start increasing. And he has a very scientific method that he uses in terms of getting to a point where he will use a model called a go or a no-go. And based on the likely support and the probable support, we have about a 53% chance of getting to a yes on this fee. Next slide, please. What happens then when you give some of the arguments, some of the background information that I was providing, that likely support goes up to 57.5%. That, for this particular firm that has done a lot of this work across the nation, is a definite go. Again, we can get the potential for 70% support, but it's that 57.5% that we can count on that really is a high enough level of support that we believe that this will pass. Next slide. So I'm going to wrap this up very quickly again, and as Alex said, we're available for questions, as is Commissioner Bozovich, and thank you both for being here. This is the timeline that we've been on in terms of the original discussion where we had our Board of County Commissioners discussion and the Roads Advisory Committee. What this kind of lays out, we're in that circle point at the bottom of the timeline, the regional solution, regional partners. We've got this relatively tight timeline scheduled that we're meeting with all 12 cities. Not all of them, but most of them before the December 16th board meeting. They want to hear back from the cities. On the 16th, we're asking them for direction to move forward with an ordinance to place this on the May ballot. And then that's our timeline for the additional work that we would have to do in order to create the ballot language, doing a voter's pamphlet and some additional work to get to the May 19th deadline. Next slide. So really what we're here for this evening, and I think we both said this a couple of times, is we are asking at the board's direction for city support. The board would like to have the city's support to place this vehicle registration fee on the May ballot. The price point, again, based on the research, is for a $35 annual fee. That's for motor vehicles, trailers, and then it would be $20 for motorcycles. We legally could have a higher price for motorcycles, but motorcycles currently don't pay as much. They're 2 wheels instead of 4. We just thought that was more fair. So that is our current proposal. And I believe that's the last slide before the question slide. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'd be happy to answer any
Thank you.
questions.
Counselors, do you have questions? I'm sorry.
Can
Counselor Sanders.
Can we bring the slide up where you did the split of the percentages among the cities? First of all, the precursor to my question would be, it says by current statute that it is determined by per capita.
Yes.
Is there any wiggle room there? The reason I ask that is because my experience as the road commissioner for Dune City and our 10 miles of roadway and the fact we live off ODOT's apportionment, we have to go for grant funding. Lane Act does a lot of the distribution of funds. This community has always been set aside on the back burner. You're not even the stepchild. You're not even in the family room. When I saw this, to me, it had been more palatable is if there's a certain level where the minimum distribution would be like 1% across the board and then bring it up and split it. Because right now, the amount of money you're talking about for Dune City, you know, it would help us, but it's nowhere near what it could be to be impactful for our community. So that's why I ask, is there any wiggle room?
Well, the wiggle room based on population, there isn't any. But where there is wiggle room, in all honesty, is with the 40%. So the ORS says you must split it 60-40 unless cities and the county come to a different agreement. Now, for a lot of reasons, the county isn't particularly interested in doing a lot of discussions about changing that distribution. But again, we want to hear from you if that's something that's important. There is wiggle room there. So do you understand the difference, what I'm saying?
I understand you clearly. Thank you. Commissioner Bozovich, what's your take on it? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Let me drag another chair up here so I can get the microphone. Sitting up there in our meetings, I'm always telling people, use the mic.
Mike.
So, as I hear that discussion, I'm thinking to myself, what would it take for us to at least get a base of 1% for all the cities of that 40%? And would it be that we just make it 41% and we determine that, I'm not quite sure if we can go around the statute as to the split, but what we could look at is what would it take to get Westford a little bit, to up a little bit, but Westford doesn't have any city streets, which is one of the interesting things. But how do we deal with that? It might be in that we choose to write our ordinance, we have to do a minimum of 40%. If I can convince the other, 2 out of the 3 other 5 commissioners to write the ordinance that the split's 42% or it's 43%, or it gets you guys up to what would have been 1% of 40%. That's a possibility, and it would increase that share. So that's one of the things I hadn't even thought about until you just brought it up. So that's interesting to hear as something, and I'm sure we'll probably, this is the first city we're talking to, so I'm sure I might hear that repeated elsewhere.
The reason I asked that, Commissioner, is because I'm very familiar with the pavement condition, the PCI. And most of our roads in this community are 80 or above, and it's that way because we've been aggressively maintaining them. But we're in that structural deficit of funding, just like your slides from your staff show. If that was made to 1%, that would make a tremendous difference for the people of this community as far as maintaining those roads. It would have an opportunity to put us on an even keel as we move forward.
And it is important to keep that PCI up there because, like you saw in that what I refer to as the turn down graph of asset management, you can manage it on that flat portion before it starts turning down. You're saving people a lot of money in the long run. And so I commend you all for keeping your PCI up so high.
That's why
And
it's for
it's,
the 1%.
it's good asset management by Dune City, and that's what we want to try and do with the county roads. And, you know, we're looking at a deficit, a structural deficit of about 9 million, and our share of this, that $35, that's 60% right now is calculated about 6.5 million. So it doesn't even quite get us back up to try and stay up on that top portion of that graph. We'll have to do other things to get there. But so while there may be some flexibility to get you a little bit more, I don't want to promise the moon, because we still have to get enough out of this to be impactful also for us to keep our road system.
And I understand, Commissioner, but as the road commission chairman, I felt it was my obligation to bring it up and let you know and the staff know that to benefit this city, that does a little bit, but to get where we need to be to maintain the roads in the city, to give us a fighting chance, we're not gonna be ahead of the game, just like you guys.
So what you're saying is 22,000 is maybe not enough to make a big difference, but 40,000 or more would have.
That would be impactful for us.
It'd be like an annual project.
That, we spent about that just to do slurry seal on 7 of our roads this year. That type of improvement in our funding, night and day for this community. 22,000 still leaves us in that structural deficit that is just gonna agonize this community over time.
Yeah.
But doing it the other way would give us some breathing space.
And you know, maybe the way to structure this, and as I'm thinking off the top of my head, is, you know, it's the straight, the 40% gets split this way, but maybe Lane County can set aside a portion of our 60% to be granted to small communities to get it up to a base level. And we can structure it that way, where we take, you know, whatever it is, you know, another 100,000 of our portion that gets granted on top of your 0.51% of the take, to bring you up to close to what would be 1%. So we can look at that. There are probably ways to structure that.
The other thing I might add, Counselor, is that, you know, one of the things that the board talked about the other day was, just as I had mentioned in 2009, that House Bill 2001 passed, we expect a similar bill in the 15 session. There's already talk about whether it's going to be an increase in gas tax for the state, or even potentially an increase in the state's portion of vehicle registration fees. And so the board had this conversation about, well, you know, should we try to put into the ordinance some sort of hydraulic that recognizes that if there were even if secure rural schools came back in some fashion, that could the board set this rate different than $35 in that event, even after going out to the voters for approval. And so it sort of set up this conversation that we don't know what will happen in this next legislature, except for the fact that people are talking about it, and there may be additional dollars to cities as a result of whatever happens during the 15 session. So I think we've got a couple of, you know, between this and what happens in the legislature, we've got some positive revenue hopefully coming. Obviously, this one depends on Lane County voters supporting it, and the Oregon legislature depends on a lot of things sort of coming together correctly for that body.
If I can add on to that a little bit, one of our concerns though is in talking with consultants about passing this sort of thing with a vote of the public, is the more complex we make the actual act, the more difficult it is to get it passed. So we have to be careful about, you know, if we are going to have some way of having a sliding scale depending on how much additional funding we get from the state, that it's somehow or another clearly said so we don't confuse people. If we are going to choose to set aside, you know, 5% of our 60% for small city grants, it has to be very clearly said and not confuse the voters a lot. So with that, I'll kind of add another item to the list. One of the things people want to know is how are we going to use the money, and being clear about that. One of the things the board talked about yesterday was we want to make it clear that this is going to be used for road maintenance and operations and safety improvements, and it's not about building new facilities or adding capacity, because that's really when you ask people that, they don't really support paying extra taxes for new facilities. They just want to see the current facilities maintained and kept safe. I mean, there's a real concern for the public, and with the recent accident near Mapleton, it's even been heightened about keeping our roads safe. It'd be good if the cities could also echo the counties in saying that that's their intention of how to use this funding. If we could all say the same thing, we can't dictate to you how to use that, your portion of the 40% at all. But if the cities would be amenable to stating that it's really about road maintenance, operations, and safety, and not about building new facilities, that message won't get clouded when we ask the voters to approve it. So I just want to kind of, as the political aspect of this, if we do choose to go out, the simpler the message is for the voters, the easier it will be for them to understand it and support the measure. But one of the things we're, as a county, trying to make clear is it's not about new roads. This is about maintaining what we have. That's $6 billion that the public has invested so far in our roadways and keeping that asset up to safe and drivable conditions. So that's really what we're looking to do here.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Scarberry?
As far as cars and motorcycles, are there any other entities that would be taxed? Travel trailers, utility trailers?
Yes, it would include travel trailers, it would include light trucks, so trucks lower than 26,000 pounds.
There's
Boat trailers?
float trailers with a plate, so I think it's dual axles that are licensed.
1,800 pounds, I believe,
Yeah.
even if it's single axle.
Even a single axle, yeah. I've got a 15-foot boat that I don't have a license on, don't need to register. But the travel trailers, you know, there is that's different than RVs.
Right, RVs are not,
Are not.
are not subject to the fee.
Yeah. We expect to see the legislature actually deal with some RV issues. I don't know if you followed it, but there's some campground revenue that comes from those licenses. So that's another issue we sort of pay attention to.
And then you mentioned something about changing the rate, lowering it. Is there anything to prevent it from, in a year or two, of being raised?
Basically, what we're asking the voters to do is approve an ordinance, which technically, it's like when you take like Measure 91 that just recently passed, it's statutory. The legislature can change that. If the voters approve an ordinance, yes, the board could change that and increase that fee in the future if they chose to. I think it would be political suicide for anyone. I think it'd be an instant recall. But so I would say that what we're asking the voters to pass is, you know, a measure that says up to $35, which will allow us to decrease it if we want to, but without going through the board taking our authority as a county over 350,000 people, and the max we can increase to is 100% of the state's fee. So we only have up to $43 to increase it. So $35 is not that far from the max we're allowed statutorily, but I think if we increased it 1 penny without going back to the voters for a vote, we're going to be in deep political trouble.
Have you worked out yet whether this would be a 2-year tag, 4-year tag?
The fee is $35 per year, so most vehicles register for 2 years. So basically, right now, you register your car, it's $86. When you register your car, it'd be $156. It'd be an extra $70 for a 2-year registration.
Thanks.
I'll be honest with you, I was one of the 23 and ultimately became part of the 20% at the end of the survey, okay? And it's because I have some heartburn with the expenditures of funds at the county level. As you know, during all the budgeting process, a lot of documents were made available to the public. And in that review, I discovered some things that if it were me, I would have done it differently. My issue is the way those funds would be spent. I know you're assuring that it will be on roads, but roads involve people, and I may not necessarily agree how much people are being paid to do the jobs that they're doing. So I'm just gonna be up for it and straightforward with that. I personally, if you're counting all the vehicles you're talking about, am looking at an increase to my budget of over $200. And so I'm just one person. There's 1,360 people in Dune City. Are we breaking even on this 22,000 thing? I'm not even sure it'd be easier just for Dune City to say, hey, give us some money. But if that's the way they feel about it. But so I still have reservations. I'm going to take some convincing that it's worth it.
You know, I think people are pretty aware of my political background. Maybe as not being exactly a tax and spend kind of guy. And I will assure you that we have been very careful to look at doing the max we can on the expense side before we came and are asking people to do something on the revenue side. I think we've done, in fact, it was our public works unions that came forward with a plan to change our health care insurance, 4 years ago. They were the ones that made the suggestion to move to 2 plans that we ultimately moved all 7 of our bargaining units to, and all of our non-represented employees. It's saving us over $2 million a year in our all funds budget. So it's our public works guys that are actually initiating some of these cost savings things. They're a pretty conservative group themselves, and they in their last contract have had no COLAs, I think, for 3 years now, and we're not exactly going wild, I think, with the spending there. I think we've done a really good job. I think the county's computer-driven pavement condition index guided maintenance system is state-of-the-art. In fact, we're the model for a lot of other counties. We look at, catching those roads just as they get to the tipping point, and that's when we do the overlay, or that's when we do the fog seal. We don't do it early, we don't do it late. We have a computer tracking system of our 1,600 lane miles of roadway to make sure we're doing it just on time. So we're not spending the extra dollars on reconstructive work. It's on that preventive maintenance. We're not doing it too early, so we're wasting life cycles. So I think, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you, Councilor Mills, and go over our budget, because I'm always looking for places to save. And if you see one I should know about it, I'm happy to be there. But I think if there's any one department that I can point to and say those guys are doing a great job, our road maintenance guys are on the ball.
I agree with you on that, and I do know that they have come to the rescue of Dune City, and they're, when I pick up the phone and say, hey, somebody decided to dump their RV on the side of the road, can you come take over it? They do the next day. So I'm torn at this point between my conservative nature when it comes to fiscal responsibility and what I know needs to be done, and I know that we're suffering as well. But while I've got you, one quick question. Because I know you alluded to it earlier, people don't realize, am I driving over a county road or a city road, or 101 is state, right?
That is
Thank you.
correct.
I just want to make sure everybody knows that 101 is state. So if you got to complain, thanks.
Councilor Scarborough, back to you.
Just one more quick question. During your discussions with the other commissioners, did anyone bring up anything about the potential hardship that if this passed on the outlying areas? We still have over a 6% unemployment rate. The poverty rate in Lane County is about 20%. This might just be the wrong week to talk to me about new taxes, since property taxes are due Saturday. But I just wondered, did you guys talk about that aspect of it? Because Lane County really isn't a prospering county.
Yeah, and we have, and that was, a concern of the board was, this is, it's a flat fee. There's no ability to pay taken into account, and it's the same whether your car's, worth, $1,000 or it's a $500, pickup truck that runs, which is worth every bit of $500, or it's a Mercedes-Benz. There is no change in the registration fee, and it never has been. So it's not a perfect way of taxation relative to that. And there was discussion about that. And in fact, the Roads Advisory Committee had similar discussions at times about, the fair way to tax. And there's been a lot of discussion since this even came up. I've been answering emails consistently for the last 2 days. Why aren't you taxing bicycles? Why aren't we going after heavy trucks? Can we change this, or why don't you just do a gas tax increase? And it really comes down to a lot of those things are either we're prohibited from taxing by state law, or there's no mechanism to tax them. And this is the fairest, best method we can come up with. And we all understand that there is a section of our citizenry that even $35, $3 a month is what you have to come up with, is still impactful to them. That extra $3 a month to register a car. So we're aware of that, and it was talked about, and it is a concern. But as we looked at the 27 various revenue generating options we had, and which we whittled down to the 8, now we're focused on this one, it was the best, fairest way to implement the program.
Thanks.
Excuse me, Councilor, this question actually came up the other night. The city staff did a presentation in Eugene to their council, and the mayor asked that exact question about sort of a graduated way to implement this for lower income folks. The Department of Motor Vehicles is going to be the one that administers this, and so they've set up some guidelines with counties, and they won't allow for that kind of graduation. So, not that they're, the be all and end all, but at least through their administrative function, they've said it's got to be a one fixed cost, not any sort of graduated way that DMV's got to allow to charge differently.
Thank you.
Councilor Meyer, any questions? Councilor Wells?
Mine would be more of a statement, I think, than a question, if that's all right.
Absolutely. You have the floor.
I'm a lifelong resident of Lane County. I come from a logging background. I remember riding in the Crummies in the 80s. But you don't longer see this coming. You started, shutting down the National Forest. Not you guys, but the National Forest, and we're going, our schools were well off, our roads were in good shape, and they got shut down. It's too bad that the powers that be then didn't fight a little harder to keep our national forests productive and keep the jobs and that revenue coming in, and it didn't happen. It's not your guys' fault. I'm just saying, I'm seeing this, what we were talking about in the Crummies back then, come true. It's not just this. There's some counties in Oregon that are way off worse than we are in Lane County, but it's a shame that it has come true.
Okay. Final comments, Councilor?
Good.
I believe, councilors, that they're asking for a consensus of opinion or a show of support. Is that correct?
I think it would be helpful at least to get a sense of the support of the council, that I can return back to the board and report back to the board. This city is generally in favor, this city's against, this city's in favor if we do this, and this city is willing to limit the use of the funds to maintenance. We're going to kind of get back together later on in the year and try and start crafting this and making a go, no go decision. So it'd be good to hear back from you all. As long as it happens probably sometime between now and mid-December, it doesn't have to be tonight. If you guys need to get more information, take a deeper look, talk to your constituents, and come back in a subsequent meeting and discuss this, and maybe even then report back to us what the sense of the council is.
What's the pleasure of the council? Our next meeting is the December 11th, I believe. That's correct. So we would have an opportunity to have a council meeting before your deadline or vote, and it would give us an opportunity to talk to our constituents. And so, what do you think?
Well, I really liked Maurice's comment about, I'm a retired community college administrator, and there was always a small school fund. that everyone got because it takes a minimum amount of money to run the school, whether you're got 2 students or 2,000 students. And so I really like the concept of a small city support, because we'd still have to pay the same amount of money to have our roads done as a bigger school or a bigger city would have. In fact, they probably get a better deal because bores sometimes, less overall. So if we could, I would be more than happy to support this if there were some sort of a small city minimum kind of arrangement, such as what Maurice was talking about. And I could either do that tonight or next month.
Well, I would concur with you, Counselor. The one thing that I see a discrepancy in there is the smaller cities, we don't have a city tax. The others do. And so figure out possibly some way to accommodate for that. I don't know if you alluded to possibly granting, but granting again is going through the process. It's a lot of work. It'd be, in our respect, it'd be easier just to, give the 1% to those cities without a city tax, because we rely on funding from counties and franchise fees, etc. So that's my comment. Anything else?
I've actually been talking to quite a few people about this issue. I've just been around, I've heard it rumbling, and I've been talking to people here lately because I heard on the news that they were in Eugene talking at the board, and folks I've talked to, don't agree with the graph. I haven't seen that much support for it with the folks that I've talked to.
Okay, well, shall we table the item and agendize it next month? Better idea? Better idea? All right, that's what we'll do. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out on this wet evening.
Drive safely on 126. I heard it's a really dangerous road.
Not as bad as 101.
No. Well, we'll just keep some pressure on Arnie and get them.
Linda, would it be possible for you to email us a copy of your presentation?
I'd be happy to do that. Okay,
I'll email it to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfinished business. I'll call on Councilor Mills to discuss the comprehensive plan.
Right, if you recall in your review of the minutes at our last meeting, we tabled further discussion of this because we didn't have the handout from the prior meeting. Is now in the packet. What this handout was the Ordinance Review Committee's recommendation on division of, basically discussion of the comprehensive plan review. So, as I mentioned before, I'm trying to find a thing so I can find it.
Here.
What page is it?
It says page 1. It's right after the
Is
receipt.
it before?
Right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
your book's under old business, this one's old business. There we go. Okay. Dune City's existing plan and the way it's outlined is listed on the top of the handout. And the Oregon statewide planning goals are listed below that. So if we were to follow the example set by the city of Oregon City, what they did is go by the statewide planning goals and address each one of those. We did a the Ordinance Review Committee did a breakdown of who we thought might best be responsible for addressing and reviewing and holding meetings and all that stuff for language based on those 17 statewide planning goals. And that's what's in the handout. to answer the question about grant funding, I've done a lot of research on grant funding that may be available. There are some one small grant that I have found that might work if we, and it's, grant application is due in 2 days, So, other than that, I am not familiar with anything available, grant funding available right now, other than small planning grants through GLCD, if there's any available. But as Councilor Sanders so intelligently pointed out, we really need to bite the bullet and do it ourselves, so I think.
There may be, Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I identified a resource and was forwarded to the city administrator of a qualified individual with extensive municipal planning experience that as a private consultant may consider at a greatly reduced rate than what LCOG would us to take a good chunk of this. So I don't know where that's at, but that's always something we could look at.
Right.
Budget permitting, but I agree with you. I think we need to bite the bullet and just dig in.
Hammer it out.
That having been said, what Ms. Nevada presented tonight is spot on, I think. I mean, there are issues, we really shouldn't do anything until 155 is done, because it may well change how things are written with regard to land use planning. So maybe you put that one on the back burner until 155 is done. So taking those into consideration, and what I had talked about before was specifically ordinance 203. If there is a desire to change ordinance 203 and to amend the comprehensive plan so that everything jives together, then that probably should just take place now while we're discussing this other stuff, or farming it out to other groups to be discussed.
So what's your recommendation, Counselor?
I'm just throwing it out there. I don't have a recommendation of my own, really. I mean, I would like to see, this is going to take a long time, probably well beyond my tenure in office, my terms. So you might as well get started, It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be done.
I guess the jumping off part is, where do we start? I'd like to, I really would like to just take a hiatus on this until the first of the year, and take a look in January and set an agenda that discusses a timeline.
May I make a suggestion? That
Yes.
would be after, because usually at the first of the year, we're swamped, and we don't get to our goal-setting session until probably
Late.
February. There's no point really until we get into after goal-setting again, don't you think? That you wait until
Yeah.
after goal-setting?
Couldn't we have a special meeting in the council just to sit and deal with this issue, all those little things, how we're gonna do it, when we wanna do it, timelines, and that way we're dedicating our efforts on one specific task?
That's fine with me. I don't mind having extra meetings. It's just January, especially with all the new counselor training and all the other things that go on. I don't know. Sometimes in January, you feel like you're dedicating a little too much time to be an elected official.
You guys need some remedial training?
Probably.
Okay.
Okay. Well, as it's become the custom to set goals in January, because that's the natural time you're starting at the beginning of the year, you'll set the goals, and we can just put that as one of our goal setting line items. We'll make a little note of that, and then we can dedicate a separate meeting for it. It could be later in January, it could be early February, mid-February, but we need to set a time to get started, even if it's just first quarter 2015. I mean, that, to me, right now, in consideration of all the dynamics that's happening at the city right now, you know, that might even be a little aggressive. So, does that sound all right with everyone?
I agree.
Good, okay. We'll do that. Put it on there. And Jamie, I like this. So this will be a good tool to use when we talk about that line item on our goal planning session.
But that, having been said, I just want to make it clear, as I understand it, if there is a counselor that is interested in making amendments, they can bring forward those changes anytime in the form of an ordinance, and we go through the normal process we would. So, you know, there's nothing to stop counselors from doing that if they want to do that. Right?
Right? Right. Good?
I'm good.
All right. Check. Okay, unfinished business, medical marijuana dispensary. How did you get that one? Counselor Mills, staff?
If you don't mind, I would like to start off, and then if Jamie has something to add.
Perfect.
Okay. Council did make a moratorium on the medical marijuana to put it off until the November election to see how the recreational would turn out. At this time, we feel that whatever the medical is going to be will be moot because of the recreational. The state will be formulating a legislative rule to regulate the medical marijuana, or the recreational marijuana. It's going to be kind of confusing because we have two. And they'll be regulated by OLCC, but that doesn't mean you can buy it at a liquor store. It still has to be sold at a dispensary, but OLCC will be the ones that will regulate the taxes from the sales.
Okay, so that was Measure 91 that passed.
Yes.
Okay, right, that was Measure 91 that
And that passed.
And that passed.
The state, of course, will have to take legislative action at this point, and so that has to take place, and it is assumed, but probably likely, that then OLCC will have to adopt administrative rules or regulations to implement whatever the state legislates. Now, those regs for OLCC have to be in place by July 1st, so they are on a super fast track to get this stuff taken care of. So that is what I know.
So it's out of our hands right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Except, we don't know about the moratorium.
Make a statement.
Councilor Sanders?
Hearing what the staff has told us, if it has to be, if recreational marijuana will be sold out of dispensaries, and under the current state law, dispensaries can't be within 1,000 feet of a residentially zoned area. There's not one commercial zone piece of property in this city that is not not beyond 1,000 feet. So even following the medical marijuana initiative, the requirements of the state statute, there's no place for them to sell marijuana here. I think we're putting a lot of effort over nothing at this point, because the state statute is, in essence, after having read it, it's moot. It can't be sold in Dune City because everything's within 1,000 feet. So I don't see the point of a moratorium.
Okay, so basically this one's check.
Check.
Do we need to rescind the moratorium then? I mean, I don't know if we need to take formal action or
We
have
could-
them declare it moot or whatever.
We could take action on it, I suppose, or we could let it die a natural death. I mean, it's,
Or just see,
Well,
or just see where the legislative goes with, their rules that they're gonna make to regulate everything before, we make a decision.
I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, so we live in a moratorium, the front page of the newspaper, Dune City says it's okay to sell pot. I mean,
No. Okay, all right, let's.
No offense.
Sometimes I like to let things just die naturally.
I know.
All right,
All right.
I'm good with that.
Right, moving on. Okay. Item C, ordinance 203, planning commission task force. I believe, Renee, you have a report, and also Mr. Burke this evening. So want to start?
Sure. Planning Commission had a special session before City Council tonight. They're getting close to the point of closing the citizen input on ordinance 203 and sending recommendations, from what I understand, and sending recommendations to City Council. And then what staff is, how staff feels that from once City Council gets it, we should form another CAC to go over the proposed changes before it gets reviewed. But that's, I didn't get to attend the Planning Commission meeting tonight, so George could fill us in a little better with where they're at, where they stand with the ordinance and getting the changes, and if there's a timeline when you're going to close the input and where it's going, and
Mr.
It's
Burke,
gonna
you
be
want to come
changed.
forward and?
Yeah, again, this is George Burke, I'm acting as the Planning Commission representative. We had our fourth meeting, the Planning Commission had its fourth meeting acting as a CAC. We've had 16 written comments and 2 oral presentations that'll be in the record. I believe that our next meeting is the 11th. Again, before the city council meeting. It's kind of an arrangement we made so that I didn't have to come twice a month. So we can I can go to a meeting at 3 o'clock and then come to this meeting. I believe at that meeting, the Planning Commission will have a recommendation for a new ordinance, and it will be sent to legal first, like all ordinance review stuff does, and then hopefully that will be a quick review, and then it will come as a recommendation for an ordinance to the Planning Commission in January,
Okay, wow,
I believe.
good.
that's good.
Any questions?
I just have a comment, you know, the input is quite good. I mean, I appreciate reading through that. I mean, it's wide, you know, various comments, so it's good citizenry input. Appreciate your time.
The consensus has been that we want to protect the lakes, and we don't want over-regulation and have to pay a lot of extra money for a maintenance program. The citizens don't want to pay a lot of extra money. And so that's what we're trying to come up with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Third annual Orchid Dunes Triathlon and Duathlon. Just want to start by saying thank you to Councilor Sanders. We've got a draft of a presentation that council members can use to solicit sponsorships, and we're just kind of getting in the middle of that right now and defining what it is we want to have in the presentation. And Renee, do you have any further information?
Yes, at the beginning of the meeting, I handed out a little sheet, 2015 Oregon Dunes Tri-Youth sponsorship packets. I've made a list of potential sponsors. You'll see in the third column, it says sent out. Each one that has a date in it, I sent those companies a sponsorship packet out in the mail yesterday. I have to do a little more legwork to get mailing addresses, contacts, but if anybody has any further companies or sponsors, information that they would like to turn in, just let me know. Maybe if you have the contact information, so we can get them out sponsorship packets so that we can start getting our fees built up for a bigger, better triathlon in May.
Okay, I don't have one of those.
Did I miss you something?
Did I steal yours?
I don't have one. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor.
Oh, yeah, I don't have one of these. Okay. Counselor Mills has a comment or
A question. May I, Renee, can you send me the cover letter?
Yes. Yeah.
I have, on my trip to Florida, I was taking notes at different companies that sell athletic equipment.
Oh, good. Yeah, and
Well, I have a
definitely,
list.
if anybody solicits someone for sponsorship, let me know so I can add them to this list. And I think that's one way that we'll make sure that we don't hit
Right.
one company twice, so we don't look kind of
Twice
silly
would be
and
bad.
say,
10,
oh
12
yeah,
months.
I've already got that.
Your list is omitting Representative McKibben that you talked last.
Yes.
Patty said she
Yes,
was
this
gonna-
is not a finished version. This is something I just kind of threw together so we'd have for tonight's meeting.
If you could send that letter via email to all of us, the cover letter,
Okay,
I would like to make sure if there's stuff we can put in this PowerPoint, I'd like to do it.
oh, okay, sure. All right, I'll make sure that I will get that sent out to you on Monday then. Otherwise, do you have a countdown on your phone? I have one on mine.
Mine died with the new phone.
Oh, no.
Just putting that.
It looks like we have 176 days, 10 hours, and 42 minutes until the 2015
Oh,
event.
that sounds quite a long ways away.
Let's get through Christmas.
Which is only 41 days away.
It goes fast.
It does. Anything else on this subject?
Yes.
Counselor Mills?
Do we need to get the group together about the media stuff to pick a color? Are we just gonna go with black on t-shirts or, because I imagine we need to get the order into P pretty quick.
He does a pretty good turnaround. I did place another order for these sweatshirts. From the time I placed the order to the time that we actually got the shipment, it was, for 12 sweatshirts, was a week. So it's
we've
pretty
got
quick.
time. But what if we change colors? It doesn't really matter. I don't
No,
think.
because as long as the logo and everything, the print stays the same, then it's just easy. He just lays it out on the product and.
We could go with a neon color, because teenagers now like those neon, bright yellow with something.
Orange, let's go for it. but-
Yellow.
And then
No.
double as road crew, yeah.
We could have yellow and orange and satisfy both the beavers.
Yeah, I guess we could do
That's
that.
right.
Let's be
We could
smart for
definitely
us.
do that. We are gonna have teams from there. We're gonna have
Yes.
an OSU team
Yes.
and University of Oregon team.
And also, you'll notice that I sent one to the athletic director of the school district here in Florence, because it's also an opportunity for the schools to make it a fundraiser. So if they need to fundraise for a band concert, or a choir or wrestling singlets, it's also one way that they can raise money for whatever equipment or something that they need.
Well, last year's event, it was noticeable that, some of our athletes in our area weren't participating, and it's because we started, so early in the morning on Saturday, and they had a late night track meet the very night
Yeah, they
before.
had district or something.
So, yeah, so that's probably, hopefully the planning will be different with their schedule as well.
Yes.
Okay, anything else, counselors, on this subject? Okay, all right, we're moving along. We're getting in full steam. So, new business, new city equipment usage policy. Has everyone had an opportunity to review that, including the ordinance, resolution, or what is the resolution that
It's a resolution.
created it? I had a suggestion, oh, I'm gonna find it, that we, a lot of emphasis is put on, you know, equipment, safety, and so I would like to see if we could just add something near the top about training. Someone who knows about the equipment could possibly go over with the person checking it out and kind of sign off on, say that, you know, they're okay to use it, that they know what they're doing. And I've discussed already with staff about an acknowledgement when the person actually checks out the piece of equipment that they're going to use, that they acknowledge they've at least read this material, and that they're responsible, you know, what that would include the responsibilities. Any other comments?
In regards to your training comment, we talked about that in the road commission. And in all candor, all of us on the road commission know how to use a chainsaw, a weed whacker, and things like that. And if you're gonna put a training component on it, what we all said is that if we didn't know how to use it, we would ask, and then the training could be given. Now, if you're gonna make it that there'll be training, and you have to demonstrate all that, it'd be like me trying to teach Duke how to
No.
cut wood.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, the person that's checking out, either the staff person or whoever's checking it out, to Duke, make sure, you say, Duke, if you know how to operate this thing, he's gonna go, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. And that's, you know, it's just down.
Acknowledgement.
Down
That's
there,
right there.
you know, and they are gonna need to sign the.
An acknowledgement saying they read that.
That's the purpose of this.
Yeah, we're looking at making this an administrative policy. Definitely.
Yeah.
Any other comments, you guys? You read this and like it? It's awesome. Okay. All right, we're good. We're good with this. All right. Anything else for, Councilman?
Yes, on the other side, you know, I'm checking out a key. I don't need training, right? Well, I hope I don't need training on how to use a key.
A weed whacker. We're talking about a weed whacker.
But you said, it says city equipment. And that includes, I mean, if you stop and think about it, you gotta be careful how you write it. It's gonna apply to everything. So just bear that in mind. You don't wanna get too detailed. I think the city is perfectly capable of figuring out.
I think I would classify keys, and keys controls office supplies, and you get out of that.
And
Oh, okay.
some of these keys are not double-sided. You have to know how to use them.
Well, that's true.
Yes, and if it's dark out, it's
Okay, we're losing
quite
control.
frustrating.
All right.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Too much regulation.
So staff gonna come
Carry
back
it
with
on, I
a,
think.
what's gonna happen at this point with this?
we're gonna just refer it back to staff to do a little revision on it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
It's not like it's,
yeah, we'll just add in, you know, the sentence about the training and signing off and, you know, make a signature line at the bottom of the second page or something, or,
I'm good.
okay?
I do have one question, if I may.
yes, you may.
Why are city officials accepted out from, for punishment if we violate?
Oh, that,
Or whatever that is at the bottom.
there's a reason for it.
I'll be quiet.
Is-
I figure there must be.
The only people that can fire an elected official is the electorate through the
Oh,
ballot
okay.
box or
All right,
recall.
so-
A city official who takes a weed whacker, or let's say a blower, and goes up the driveway is committing an ethical wrong and potentially a crime. That can be held accountable for that way.
Thank you. That clarifies it for me.
That's
That's the
good
first
to
thing.
know.
Oh, we're accepting ourselves out of it, how nice.
I
Didn't feel right.
Let's go.
All right.
All right, reports. We're moving on to reports, unless anyone has anything else to add. I had an opportunity this afternoon to attend the debriefing of the Ford Institute for Community Building. And if you'll recall, Rebecca Goring gave a presentation regarding, and solicited input via online, and this is what they were reporting. So there were 38 citizens from Dune City that participated with this, and it came to as a revelation to me that perhaps some Dune City residents whose address was Florence affiliated themselves with the Florence one, so they got counted in the Florence one. But I'm just, happy to let you all know that we did have some residents that participated with that, and there was a very good turnout for the debriefing. There was between 60 and 75 people there. This afternoon, Commissioner Bosevich was there, and very well attended. One of the things that came out for Dune City residents, their recommendations would be for economy and business, and to promote the heritage of Dune City. So that was really kind of nice to learn that. So I'm sure we'll use this in our goal planning sessions. So for what that's worth. So that's my report for this evening, and we'll move along to Councilor Myers' report.
I am still looking for some articles.
Okay.
They were due the end of October, and that was in 14, not 15. So if you got any ideas, get them in so we can get something going here.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, get it in. Councilor Mills, ordinance review.
I'm making a note to myself. Sheldon wants me to give him an article. Now. Ordinance Review Committee did not meet. Water Quality Committee did meet.
Okay.
No, we didn't meet yet. We didn't meet because I wasn't here.
Yeah, you were out of town.
So, no, I didn't come in.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Wells?
Did the normal maintenance, but we do have one other issue. Our west wall out here, Fred and I took a look at that, and I'm not sure that it's LP siding, but whatever kind of siding is, it's starting to die. But I think that we can make it through this winter. I don't think we want to get a contractor out here in winter. But come this spring, I think we want to have a professional come out and look at this wall, and looks like, I poked around on it. I think we'll make it through this winter all right, but come spring, I think we need to have a professional look at this outside west wall.
Okay.
The inside wall is fine here, so it hasn't got
Yeah, we
through.
got through, Something to think about though.
Well, it's the weather side. So.
Yeah, it's just starting. I've seen it really, really bad. That's not that bad, but it will eventually, so something to think about.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Anderson's absent. Councilor Scarberry.
No meeting last month, and try for next week.
Okay. Councilor Sanders.
The minutes of the road commission report speak for itself, and you're seeing a lot of the fruits of the labor there with the equipment use policy. So unless there's any questions, I will say no other information.
Okay. Renee, do we have a staff report for this evening for emergency services, or?
Yes, Fred did leave me with each of those. WeLog met on October 20th. They went over their financial reports, were accepted and submitted, and a supplemental budget is being prepared for 2014-2015. That will also include the recently acquired $40,000 grant that WeLog was granted. The American Radio Relay League gave a presentation and submitted handouts. Resolution 2014-01, the amendment of the WeLog intergovernmental agreement, was approved, and I thought we had included the resolution with the packet, but I don't see it. So going on, The active shooter medical first responder training grant was analyzed, and handouts were provided. A lengthy discussion was held on natural hazardous mitigation, plan update, and how WheeLog members will participate. Chief Landward provided an update on the request for proposals for the emergency operation plan, and the minutes to the September 15th meeting were approved and submitted, and they are attached for everyone's review. The next meeting will be Monday, November 17th at 10 a.m. at the fire station on Highway 101. All right, for staff report, October permit activity increased this month compared to September. We issued 9 permits, including 4 structural permits, 3 electrical, and 2 mechanical. Work continues on 1 subdivision application, which is Montgomery View Estates, and that is actually, believe it or not, getting close to final, you know, it's just about final. It just went poof. Copies of permits to Lane County and Lane Council of Governments went out on schedule. There were 2 complaints filed in October. Complaints were for road maintenance and building without a permit issued. There has been another cougar sighting in Dune City, which is right here at the old schoolhouse in front of City Hall. It actually walked within 10 feet of the resident that lives here while they were outside. And that same day, we had a bear visit here twice, outside Fred and I's window, and then over by Engelmeyer's trailer. There's been, the bear that's been sighted is a mama bear and does have 2 black cubs. So if you're out walking around, be aware that there's a mama and a couple babies wandering around. And they like to leave a trail of garbage behind. The Planning Commission continued to work on the septic system maintenance, ordinance number 203. They advertised for and received citizen comments on this ordinance. This will be an ongoing project for 2 more months. The commission also continues to review Chapter 155, zoning and development. The regular November 27th meeting has been canceled due to Thanksgiving. However, a Planning Commission meeting was held earlier today, which George filled us in on that. Sponsorship packets for the 3rd annual triathlon duathlon were prepared and distributed out to 16 potential sponsors yesterday in the mail. The winter issue of the newsletter, and we're working on that as Sheldon acquired. We do need articles to put into the newsletter. Even if it's just a little 1 or 2 paragraph, if you've got something on your mind, let's, get it wrote up, turn it into City Hall, give it to Councilor Myers, so we can get the newsletter done and out in the mail. Planning for the mayor's banquet has begun. Invitations will be sent out within the next 2 weeks. We are looking forward to visiting with all the residents of Dune City. The mayor's banquet is scheduled for Friday, December 12th at 5:30 here at the community center. Staff has been updating Dune City water rights. Linda's been working pretty hard on that. Along with property files. Required extensions for the 4 state water rights that the city has are being examined and updated. Septic files are being updated, and letters to permit customers with expiring permits have been sent out this month. And I must say that I've gotten an absolute outstanding response from the community with Dune City Hall wanting to take the time to make sure that if a resident has a permit that was never closed out, never finalized, that we've taken the time to go through and send them a letter and say, hey, going through my files, I see that permit number 2009-011, E for electric didn't have a final inspection done, and so we've gotten a lot of those done. We've kept the building department very busy the last month, which is good. I think out of all the letters that I sent out, probably 80% of those have all been finalized in the last month. Yeah, it's outstanding. I love it. My database looks so good. That's about all I have for tonight. Any questions?
No, I'd just like to extend my thanks and gratitude for you and the rest of the staff, you know, picking up where, well, Fred's away, and appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Just business as usual.
Business as usual.
So, for the good of the order, Councilor Gregory, Councilor Mills?
As mentioned in the report, the storage permit for Dune City's water right on Mulleney Lake is overdue, and we need to file an extension. And I would specifically ask that this be placed on next month's agenda for discussion by the council and approval of necessary expenditures if possible.
Did you get a copy of that today?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Oh, today.
We really, really need, well, we'll talk about it next month, but we really, really need to get a water right engineer on this so that we can get it finalized, closed, done. And I know it's gonna be expensive, but it would be nice to get it off of everybody's plate and have the ball get off of, we're stuck on center, and let's get off.
And I think the money's in the budget for that.
Well, at least to get started on it, I think. But
All right,
so I specifically request that we put place on next month's agenda as an action item.
Okay. Got it.
We'll do it. Councilor Meyer?
My wife is trying to develop an app that will operate the same as my iPhone, because I can only receive, I can't send. And she'd like to have me be the same way.
Just for our general knowledge.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for sharing that. Councilor Wills? Follow that.
Not again. I had something too, but I'm not gonna.
Councilor Wills?
Nothing.
We'll come back to you, okay. Councilman Mendon?
In regards to that cougar sighting, about 5-6 days ago, I left my driveway after dark in the light rain, and as I turned off my driveway, there was this big cat. It is a big cougar. And, it struck me that I'm there in my vehicle coming out my driveway, and it didn't startle it at all. It's not afraid.
Yeah, that's what
So-
this person said too.
So, and you just walked and kind of snapped its tail with a little black tip of fur at the end of it. You don't see that too often, but we do have a cat that has this as its territory. It is big and it's not afraid, and I just think the public should be aware that, it's not just seeing it, it's here and it seems to be staying here.
Yeah, and we called ODFW to see what we could do. Basically, there's nothing we can do, just be aware of your surroundings. You can shoot it, but remember, you're not to discharge a firearm in city limits. But if it is attacking you, a family member, or your pet, ODFW won't come after you for shooting it, but you may get in trouble with Lane County.
For shooting it?
For shooting it, because you're discharging a firearm in city limits.
I think in the defense of one's life or another person's life, they wouldn't have any stinging at all.
Yeah, and same goes for a bear. A bear, I would not recommend trying to shoot at, because you wound a bear, and it's just gonna make it a little more mad.
Same thing with a cat.
Yeah, same way.
But I think a cougar is a little bit easier when you shoot it to kill it. A
Yeah.
bear's skin is pretty thick.
Cats eat meat, bears eat berries. No
Or
beer.
Arlene's garbage and garbage can.
Anyway, that's all I have.
All right, good, thanks. All right. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, and there is cake in the kitchen.
So moved.
Hi.
Second.
Moved to second, we're out here, it's 8:40.